In this video, I give a breakdown of all the costs involved in getting a paragliding license in Switzerland. If you're interested in getting a license or just curious, please continue watching this video. First of all, I'll cover the monetary aspect, which is the money part. Training from Paraworld, which was the school in Zurich. At the time of my training, which was in 2022, they offered a 1,990 francs for the whole education for students. And since I was a student back then, I got this discount, and if you're not a student, you'll have 500 francs extra charge. So that basically covers first basic training hills, like learning how to inflate the gliders, all the basics. And you have 18 months of unlimited high flights that you can go to. High flight meaning it's not in the hill, it's at least average 600 or 500 meters over ground, and you do maneuvers and some thermal flights and so on. So you'll have 18 months and you can go as many times as you want. So that's a very good advantage that you can take off. And also you get to test their equipment for 3 days for the first 3 high flights. And then you'll have to purchase your own equipment, which is going to be discussed later on. As well as there are some theory lessons that you can go to, and they hold events, and just being part of the community overall comes at 1,990 francs of cost. I have noticed, however, in a recent website changes that they have increased the price by 1,400 francs extra, which is almost double even for student pricing. So it'll need to be considered if you want to get into it, but at the time of my training it was 1,990 francs. Actually, before I got started, they had a thing called a Schnuppertag. Schnuppertag is day you can just go and learn, and you can just even do it as a tourist, and you just feel if this sport is the right sport for you. And that Schnuppertag was like 100 francs, and you go there, you get to fly in a little hill, and you learn the maneuvers and very little knowledge. However, you get a sense of what this sport is like. And they immediately after the Schnuppertag is over, encourage students to enroll to their full course. And for 1,990, actually, if you just enroll within 2 weeks after the Schnuppertag, then you don't have to pay for the Schnuppertag. So you just pay 1,990 in total. So that's basically what I did. I did a Schnuppertag and decided that, of course, I want to get into this. And then I paid 1,990, and then I started the schooling process. You're just going to this Übungshand, which is a training hill that you have a 40-meter height difference, and you learned basic maneuvers like inflation, acceleration, and control of the gliders aboard, and all the basic stuff you need to know. There, you just pay for the shuttle, and the shuttle fee is not covered in the schooling fee. Therefore, you have to pay 20 francs for each day of training. And so I did like 4 basic Übungshand training. And then once I felt comfortable to go to high flights, and actually instructor like recommends you once they notice that you're up to a certain level, then you can start going to high flights, which you can also go with either a shuttle from the school or a train or a bus or any other transport medium, or your own car if you want. Since I didn't have any car, I took only either a shuttle or a lift from my friend or a train and a bus. I basically got my license after 24 days of high flights, and it took me around a year to do that. It was basically almost half of it was with the shuttle bus with the school, and half of it was with public transportation. So for the half of 24 days, which is 12 days, for 20 francs per day of shuttle bus, I had to pay in total 240 francs. And then for public transportation systems, which would cost usually more than you would pay for the school shuttle. However, you have more flexibility in terms of like when you go, and then like from where you depart, since you don't have to gather in the shuttle bus area, and also when you go back home, because with the shuttle you all have to take the shuttle back. But if you come with the public transportation, you can just get back home in the middle of the day, even during the training, because you are free to go. So that was around 30 francs per day ish in terms of public transportation, which for 12 days cost around 360 francs in total. And actually the major cost is the Seilbahn. The Seilbahn is the cable car that goes up to the mountain. So in Switzerland, like almost every single flying site has a Seilbahn, meaning that you can just take it and pay it and go to the top of the mountain, which is great because in other countries they don't have this facility, and therefore you have to walk up or drive up, and it's just a big hassle. So however, the Seilbahns are very expensive at times, and they can also be very cheap. So they're Seilbahns owned by the public facility, like the public transportation even, but there are also Seilbahns that's private, and they're going up to very high altitudes, like up to 1,300 meters of difference. Then it can go up to prices such as 40 to 50 francs for one ride. And for the Seilbahns that's public, it can be as low as 3 francs or 6 francs per day, like unlimited. So it was quite hard to gauge total price, but I would say that the average price of the Seilbahn for a day of flight is around 30 francs. So I would put that, multiplied it by 24 days of flight, and that would come to around 720. But from experience, I also recognize that the Seilbahn prices are proportional to the number of flights you do, because you often take one-way ticket instead of a day ticket, and therefore you sometimes pay for every single flight. And since I did 69 flights, you could even argue that probably I paid around 10 francs or 8 francs. Therefore, I probably spent more like 600 to 700, which is the same price at the end. But considering that some places are very expensive, I think that in total it's probably more like 900 to 1,000 francs that I've spent in the Seilbahn system. And then there is the part in terms of the SAV. SAV is the Swiss hang glider, so hang glider, Delta, Paraglider, and all the free flying members club. And basically they do all the examinations, and also they give you insurances and so forth. So therefore you have to be a member. I think you can also take their services even without being a member, but it ends up being way more costlier, so it's better to be a member. And so I signed up for the member once I started doing high flights, I believe, because you must have an insurance once you start flying with your own wing in high flights. So that counts starting from the day you purchase your equipment, basically. So I got the membership a bit before that, and their membership for a year is 120 francs. And that basically gives you a lot of privileges, such as you get access to their meteo analysis. So they give you clues on like what the weather is like, and give access to the data that you can check what the temperature and pressure gradients are in the country. Also, they gave access to internal member services. I cannot really name them much, but there were some parts where you can get secondhand equipment and so forth. However, the majority part of this membership is just being part of the member, and having. And also, I'm not really sure if you can get insurance without being a member, because by being a member you get a member number, and you have to put your member number on the wing of your paraglider. In terms of regulations, it is mandatory to put your SFL number. And so if you're not a member, then I'm not sure how the insurance or the numbering part of your wing would work. So in a sense, they just don't really give an option. So you would have to consider that you're gonna be a member. But it's kind of cool because they give a monthly magazine like this, and it has very interesting informations, like very cool like flights that people did for the last month and so forth. And yeah, it's pretty cool. And in terms of the insurance, it is mandatory to take an insurance of the third-party liability insurance covering up to 10 million francs of damage. Meaning that if you fly and you hit a cow, if you hit a farm, then you'll have to pay for those damages. And this insurance basically covers all the damages that you might cause. And it's surprisingly very cheap if you remember. And it comes to around 82.5 francs per year. So that covers a whole year that you can fly. And that basically ensures that you can cause damages, and then you don't have to worry about it. and you're legal to fly. So I took that, but also there's an optional glider recovery insurance, which basically means that when you land in a tree or in some random places and you need that glider pulled down, you probably would need to have some help. And they have the specific insurance to cover the case of recovering the glider, which happens quite more often than you think. So, I mean, I also took it because I thought that there is a chance that I will end up in a tree and need some help. So that's around 28 francs per year. And yeah, it's amazing. You can get almost the full insurance coverage, or like, except for like your accidental medical damages, like you're at least very safe. At least you're very calm when you're flying with this 100 francs per year of insurance, which is not so expensive, that you can cause damages and you can get your glider rescued, which is a great feeling. So I really recommend people to also take the glider rescue, because I know for a fact that some people don't take it and then they get hang in a tree and then they regret that they didn't take it. Now, as I said, once I started getting to high flights, you can start using the school's equipment. However, they officially limit it as 3 high flights maximum. And it's kind of not true, because I know that people fly like 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 times even, and myself I flew around 7 times in the school's glider. However, once I reached a certain number of flights, they kind of pressured me to buy their own equipment. So then I had to buy one, and the equipment is definitely the biggest price contributor. So the equipment basically breaks down into 3 different parts. The first is your glider, which is the big thing that makes you fly. The second is a harness that you strap yourself into, and the third is the reserve parachute, which is oh shit button for paraglider pilots basically. And so for the glider, I bought it with the bag that wraps the glider, which is better because you don't have to put all the messy lines stuffed into your bag. It cost me 3,500 francs because I got some discount, and the original price was actually 3,989 francs. So I got 10% discount, therefore I paid 3,500 francs in total. And then for a harness and reserve parachute, I paid 2,060 francs. So it's almost half and half, like 1,000 for the reserve parachute, 1,000 for the harness. And they also had some different things, like as I said, you have to have a number on your glider, so you have to buy those patches of numbers that you have to put in on your glider to put your SFL number, and that was around 40 francs ish. But at the end, for me, the total cost was 5,560 francs for the whole equipment that I had to buy from the school. I want to note here, however, that if you don't buy from the school, and so this is related to the business model of the paragliding schools worldwide, even in Korea, I know that schools usually take a big profit from selling the equipment. So, for example, the glider I purchased was 3,500 that I paid, but actually they get it from the retailers around 1,500. And so you can think of equipment as to be double the pricing of what the retailers would directly sell to the schools. So let's say I paid 5,500, right, for the whole thing, then probably they made a margin of around 2,700 francs. So in order to make sure that they have this profit, they have a mechanism where they allow you to buy the gliders and all the equipment, harness and rescue, so 3 main components, from an external vendor or a second-hand market and henceforth. However, they will charge 1,800 francs on top of the purchase that you make privately to make sure that they keep this profit margin. And that basically, as far as I know, breaks down into 900 for the wing, and then 450 for the harness, and 450 for the reserve parachute. So you could technically buy a second-hand component of a wing or harness or reserve, just 1 or 2 of them, or even the whole thing, but then you'll have to proportionally pay for the extra fee that the school charges. So since I just got everything from the school, like I didn't have to pay any extra charges. However, yeah, it is a big sum of investment, and I know for a fact that some of my friends took the second-hand option, which was a glider like selling at like 400 or 600 francs, which is incredibly cheap. And even if you add up the extra like fee that the school charges, is 900, that comes up to about 1,500, which is almost half the price of the 3,500 that I paid for the whole glider, which was brand new. And of course it's better, it's like not used at all. But I think that if you are worried about the budget, and especially because once you start paragliding, you probably wouldn't end up with a wing after a long time, especially because the beginner wings are, I mean, not always what you want in terms of weight or your specifications. For example, for myself, I want to do more alpine paragliding, where I want very low weight and very low volume paragliders. And there also the harness is pretty much, beginner harnesses are out of scope. And so personally, I kind of regret buying everything from the school as a beginner package. However, I also think that it was the easy option just to buy it from them. However, if you want to save money or have a specific need that you want to fulfill, such as like lightweight paraglider and lightweight harnesses, which of course the school wouldn't really recommend in terms of safety, but also because of their profit margin. But it's your choice at the end, and you can get up to, I think, 2,000 francs lower on total cost, even if you pay the 1,800 extra charge by the school fee. So it is up to you, and I think that that could probably be a major cost reduction factor. Safety-wise, there's not much difference. Maybe there's a bit of performance difference, but at the end, I think it really doesn't matter, and I would recommend people to buy secondhand if they can. So then there's a couple other things, like you need a radio to communicate with other people, the instructor for the course, because they command you with the radio on what maneuvers you need to do, what kind of mistakes you made, and all that. So that for me was around 86 francs that I bought from the Digitech, which is like a big electronics store online. And I know that some people bought it from the shop also. You can buy it for, I think, 200 francs or something, which is ridiculously expensive. And it's quite chunky, and I guess it has bigger range and all that, but it's definitely not needed for the paragliding course itself. And even as a pilot now, I rarely use radios, so I would recommend everyone to buy also their personal radio just off the market. It's a personal PMR radio that you can find easily. And then, yeah, that can also be a big money saver. So then what's left is the exams, of course. Then there are two exams. One is a theory exam and one is the practical exam. The theory exam is where you test your knowledge in the meteorology, like airspace, like vehicle, gliders, material science aspect, and few other aspects. So it's 5 categories in total. You have to pass this to do the practical exam. And the school themselves actually recommend us to pass this exam very shortly after our first high flights, because it gives us a very good sense of like the science behind all the materials and like some knowledge on the meteorology, how to read the clouds and so forth. So that, for example, was here. So registration for the theory exam, that part is costing 125 francs. And I rarely saw someone failing it, but if you fail, of course you have to pay again and do a retake. However, I passed and it was actually quite, I would say, easy if you practiced and did the online exercises on the SFR website. And the practical exam is also 125 francs, and this, by the way, is more likely to fail because you have to stick the landing, do the maneuvers, and you have to pass the airspace questions, and it's not as easy as theory exam. However, at the end, that's just also probably one-time cost for most people, so that's also the last aspect of the cost. One extra thing that I had to do was at the end when I got the license, So when you pass the exam, they actually give you the signature and the stamp, and this serves as a temporary license you can use officially. However, when you get the license, I needed to use it in other countries, so I got the IPPI, which is internationally recognized hang gliding, paragliding license. And for that, if you're a member of the SFO, then you get charged 24 francs for issuing it like this. And then this basically allows you to internationally get your license recognized, so you can fly in the United States, South Korea, and wherever place you would like to fly. And this is the member card. So this is what you get, and this also has the insurance information so that you can get support that you need when you're in need. Also, that's the paragliding license, which is pretty cool. I'm really happy about this. So typical Zaban tickets for the cable cars look something like either like this, which is like an old school, or like something like this, which is like more public transportation, but they have like a multi-day cards. So it's pretty cool. So I think that pretty much covers everything, and if we add up the calculations, first education, second the equipment and transportation and insurance and SFL membership and exams and the extra cost for the foreign pilot license card, it comes out to be 9,460 francs, which I think is more realistically 9,500 francs. And so basically that's the whole investment you need to make, 9,500 francs, in order to get a paraglider, whole set of equipment, get your license, be an independent pilot, and being able to fly anywhere you want really, and have the knowledge and the experience to fly. So that's all in the monetary aspect. Now I want to briefly cover the time aspect. So I had a lot of flights, like it starts from day 1, day 2, day 3, and goes so forth. However, it is very, very weather dependent activity. So I did 24 flights in 1 year. I think I could have done way more. However, at certain seasons and certain weather time frame, it's just impossible to go fly, because there are a lot of weather factors that affects whether it's flyable or not. Even if the weather looks good, it might not be flyable because the air is turbulent, or the wind is too strong, or there's some, I don't know, some various reasons that can make flying tricky. So you cannot treat this as something that you can just plan 2 weeks in a year and then just do it within 2 weeks. If the weather goes bad, there's no chance you're gonna get the license in 2 weeks. And also the registration for theory exam and practical exam takes time. So I would say that you have to really commit and be flexible. And one of the biggest problems for me was that I'm usually available on the weekends, and on the weekends a lot of people fly, and hence when you fly, there's a lot of people waiting in the queue to take off, and there's only one instructor, then it gets tricky to get the guidance that you want. So one good thing is that you go on the weekdays where there's instead of 23 people, there's 6 or 5 people. Then you get to fly more, you get to do more maneuvers, and you get more done in a day than if you went on the weekend. So that's one trick that you can do, but however, in general, it's a very weather dependent activity, so you'll definitely have to keep that in mind. It's not something that you do indoors and just go whenever you want to practice. So I know that some of my friends got the license in a 6 month, and I think that's realistic if you go every week, every weekend, and then really put yourself into this activity and immerse yourself. However, for me, I was taking breaks for a long time, doing almost 3 weeks break at times, and come back and do 2 flights per month, and it really fluctuated a lot. Then it took me around a year to get the license. However, yeah, you just have to spend pretty much 25 to 30 full days of flying, which is basically you get up at 8 a.m. or 9 a.m., take the shuttle or take the shuttle or either a transport, and then go there and then fly until like 5 or 4 p.m. then come back. So that's like a full day of flying. And if you can do that for like 25 full days, then I think that you're pretty much set to have enough experience to fly. And what you should also consider is that you sometimes go there and you cannot fly because the weather changes on the fly at the takeoff spot. So, for example, one time we went to Pilatus, and here I looked Pilatus Schlafen. There we arrived and the weather was not looking so good, and then the fogs came in and then we couldn't take off for 3 hours, and a lot of people just left beforehand. But at the end, like, it was very long wait and we just talked a lot. But like days like that definitely elongates the whole training process. So that's something I think we should also consider, because even if you think that you can fly on a certain day and the school thinks that they can fly, sometimes you cannot fly, and therefore you have to make up for that extra days later on. So yeah, I think 6 months is realistic, 3 months is quite pushing it, and 1 month is probably impossible unless in a good weather conditions and being very flexible. And in terms of like the examinations and all the other aspects, I think that there's not much time commitment that you need to make. It's just training and actual flying that you really need to put yourself into and be flexible to adopt for those. But at the end, after all this cost comes a great reward, which is like you are an independent licensed pilot and you can literally fly anywhere you want. So I think it's a pretty nice balance of cost and the result that you get from it. However, I would note that it is particularly more expensive to get a license, the whole training process in general in Switzerland, just because the country itself is more expensive, hence the transportation and all the facilities and schooling fees and equipment costs are like triple the cost that I would have to pay in Korea, for example. However, I would say that there's a big benefit of training here, which is first, you get to know the Alps very well. Like you fly literally in the Alps every day that you fly with the school, and you are basically then flying in one of the best places around the world to paraglide. And secondly, like you just, I don't know, I think like cultural wise, I think I learned so much, like being a foreigner, not a Swiss German, like getting exposed to the language and also meeting a lot of different people and really meeting like really a diverse set of people. I mean, it's an activity, so I mean, and also it's a particular activity where it's not as popular as other conventional sports. So you get to meet people who are a bit more, I would say, into flying, but that there is some kind of vibe to it, I think, and it's quite cool to have that common bond with random people and then they become a good friend of yours. And I think that's one of the most interesting aspect of flying in Zurich, especially because Zurich is a very diverse city. And also I think that the training structure and the whole program itself is very well defined. And that's something that is more of a Swiss culture, I would say, but I know for a fact that in France you don't need a license to fly, and hence there is more accidents and so forth. And I think that having this curriculum and more of a organized training is in general very helpful for being an independent pilot, because you learn so much in so much detail and you are just encouraged to fail in a safe manner, and then you learn from it. And this curriculum and the mindset of instructors, I think I really enjoyed, and I'm not sure if I would have gotten the same instruction if I did paragliding in Korea. So I think that's quite interesting. And also the infrastructure is amazing. You have the Seilbahns, I mean the cable car is going to the top of the mountain. Like almost every single valley is equipped with Seilbahn, and it's used by hikers, skiers, mountaineers, and paraglider pilots, and other people, whoever wants to take it. And it's incredible because in Korea it's just impossible to go up the mountain with a cable car. It's a public facility, it's just not a thing. And I heard that it's also the case mostly in Italy as well and so forth. So I think it's a great blessing that there is this option, and it makes training really, really easier and much more interesting because you can now go up to 1,000 meters of altitude. You can go up to this crazy mountain peaks and take off from there even as a beginner because they don't have to drive you up, so there's a whole infrastructure. Yeah, I think that infrastructure part is crucial and something that makes Swiss license very much worth it. And also the Swiss license itself is regarded almost in the highest level that you can achieve in terms of the paragliding licenses you get. So for example, I got the IPPI 4 level, which is literally one level below the XC, like the long distance flying. So that basically qualifies me to fly almost anywhere without anyone's supervision. But I know for a fact that some of my friends did a license in Hungary or some other places, and they have different levels of license. So they have licenses where they can fly but under only a supervision from someone, and that's very limiting if you want to go fly somewhere. You're just not independent pilot. And also Korea has the same program where you have different levels of pilot licenses. And for me, I mean, coming from the Swiss education system where there's only one license and that's all there is, like either you're a pilot or not, either you're independent or not, either you know how to fly, you know the meteorology, you know what the dangers are or not. That makes it very clear, in my opinion, and very much simpler. And although the process may be harder because you have to do almost every single step until becoming an independent pilot, and the process is more rough and hard, I think at the end what you get is a very rich set of knowledge base and experience that you can just use forever in your pilot's career. And so I think that the quality of education is definitely higher. I'll have to verify this. I'll have to talk with people from other countries who did paragliding, but just from this little trip that I did in Korea back then, I saw some people crash landing and doing some sketchy stuff, and that kind of showed me that there are students, but the way of teaching is not so efficient in Korea, for example, at least the place that I went to. So I think that those points really make it worth it, even if it's very, very expensive. And I would probably boldly state that it's the most expensive license that you can get in the world. But still, I think that it's a very interesting experience. And if you're living in Switzerland, like, why not give it a try? Like, so yeah, that's, I think, everything. It's hot, it's raining, and so it's raining and it's cold air, so I think I'll go maybe enjoy the cold air a bit more. So thanks for tuning in.